Human-made surroundings that serve as backdrop for human activity take on eerie and unsettling qualities. These settings are not just passive locale. They become active participants in unfolding narrative, manifest as malevolent force or active opposition or hostility towards characters. Architecture of the built environment become a source of violence, suffering, despair.
Hello, my name is Ross Payton. I'm a writer, a podcaster, a game designer, and a freelancer, most notably known for Role Playing Public Radio, a tabletop role-playing game podcast. I've written an RPG called Base Raiders. I've freelanced for Eclipse Phase and Delta Green, a bunch of other games. I've also co-host Luddo Narrative Dissidents, an RPG review podcast I do with Greg Stolze and James Wallace. And I also do Night Clerk Radio, which is a haunted music review podcast, vaporwave, dark ambient, other weird electronic genres of music. And I'm getting ready to launch a backer kit campaign for the Night Clerk, a systemless horror scenario that is themed on architectural horror.
In dimly lit corridor of ancient castle, Lady Elowen took cautious steps, heart pounding in her chest. She heard legends of this place. Whispers of curse clung to its very stones. As she moved deeper into the heart of the castle, a chilling realization dawned, a moment of harrowing recognition. Tapestry, old, tattered, hung upon the wall. In the flickering torchlight, woven figures seemed to shift, eyes following her every move. Elowen's breath caught as she felt the stone floor beneath her feet ripple water-like, cold surface trying to pull her down into unseen abyss.
What really got me on this vein was picking up a used copy of Delta Green, the original 90s set book, and then Delta Green Countdown. Dennis Detwiller wrote this section on the King in Yellow and Carcosa, and that was the first published version of the Delta Green scenario called The Night Floors. Dennis later calls it surreal horror, but like in The Night Floors, it's not about a scary monster trying to kill you. It's not about being, it's not body horror. You're not about like being turned into a monster. But in Night Floors, it's not so neat. It's about a building that is infected or haunted by the King in Yellow and Carcosa, and the residents are gradually being transformed by it. At day, they seem normal, if eccentric, but at night, the building transforms.
1. Obsidian Obelisk. 2. Eldritch Renovations. 3. Cursed Blueprints. 4. Sinister Suburban Neighborhoods. 5. Echoes of Tragedy. 6. Cursed or Abandoned Buildings. 7. The Mysterious Tower. 8. Mazes and Labyrinths. 9. Historical Connections. 10. Psychological Geography. 11. Isolation. 12. Unholy Altar. 13. The Enchanted Garden.
A haunted house, it's your home. It's someone's or someone else's home. It's supposed to be safe, and it's a violation of that. And the whole thing about a haunted house is you don't know why it's doing it or how to stop it or what the implications are. It's the opposite of a power fantasy. Like horror is about disempowerment, like removing power from you. And so and removing options and making things more difficult. So like that's the basic inversion of it. And like architecture as an art form is like every other art is supposed to make us feel things, like have an emotional reaction to it. And it does this through space. Like the most obvious thing is like a cathedral. It's got tall ceilings to make you feel small and insignificant and make you think about, I don't know, the higher power up there. And so like when you in a home is supposed to be safe and comfortable and familiar, and then like there's a thing in the hallway at 3 a.m. that you're looking at made of shadow, and you're pretty sure you're not sleepwalking. It's fucking real, and it's going to drain your soul.
Psychogeography, a term and concept that originated in the mid-20th century with the Situationist International movement, exploring the relationship between places and cities and psychological or emotional experiences, finding that environment has a profound impact on our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. A key aspect was drift, a method of wandering urban environments without specific destinations, allowing experiences on a subconscious level to let environment influence thoughts and emotions, revealing hidden aspects of the city.
The idea of like, oh, you found this nice little cafe because you took a different route and you found something nice, like, yeah. I mean, there's just this well-established friction between like the architect's design, the architect design this space to be like this, and they're not always buildings, right? They could be outdoor spaces like a garden or like a park or whatever, but like then there's what the people actually do, like, which the big example I think is paths of desire, right? Like, mm-hmm. You have a street corner and the sidewalks are at right angles, right? Like, yeah, but like people are like, I want to go from point A to point B and I'll just walk across the grass, and so like they beat this path through the lawn and to where it's just dirt, and because you can see people are like, why wouldn't you take a shortcut? Just walk across the lawn. The architect didn't want you to walk. He wanted you to look at the nice lawn, but he's like, no, it's, but yeah, people are like, no, screw that. I don't give a shit what some architect thinks. And psychogeography is about that, like developing a new, I mean, that's another thing about horror is, the architectural horror is coming up with new uses for a space. Like buildings have multiple lives, right? Like it starts as this type of structure, it's a factory, then it becomes an office, then it becomes condos, and the horror becomes like this, and a lot of times there's intentionality behind it. Like they rebuild the building, but like, oh, let's turn this nice little generic warehouse into a death trap, or we did something nasty to it, and discovering that, or finding the hidden wall leading to some place horrific.
Danny is shown riding his big wheel through the hotel 3 times.
The Shining, especially the Kubrick film version, because like if you watch the film, it'll show you these shots of the hotel, and then you realize there's aspects of the architecture of the hotel that are impossible. Like there's an office, they show you this tracking shot where Jack Nicholson's walking in to the hotel for the first time, and then they show him a hallway where the job interview is supposed to take place, but that's like right where the elevator should be. And so it's like, what's in that space? Is it the elevator or the office? Like what is happening? And it's very subtle, and Kubrick does a lot of this kind of stuff. And then, of course, literally the garden maze is, comes alive with the spirits of evil. And garden maze is a perfect example of architectural horror. You could look at in the Middle Ages, labyrinths were a tool of meditation. They have a labyrinth in the floor of, like, I think it's Chartres Cathedral. And you're supposed to just walk along and think about God and meditate, and it's what pilgrims would do. And that's something that could easily be perverted or corrupted. A House of Leaves, they find this impossible space inside a house. What is going on? Bounds of Madness, it's this alien built structure. Silent Hill 2, a manifestation of James's own psychic trauma and malicious intent.
Amid the cold season, a few friends drove out to Tulsa, piled in, and set out a weekend of entertainment, camaraderie. Late night, they find themselves at a highway side hotel in the middle of nowhere. Winter, desolate.
So the premise of The Night Clerk is architectural horror. It's meant to be put in any kind of modern horror RPG setting where you check into this hotel, and when you wake up, all the windows are black. You don't see anything outside. The windows and doors are indestructible. You can't escape the structure. But when you start going through the floors, you realize they just keep going. It's infinite. And when you open up doors, the rooms start to change. They start to look less and less like normal rooms, and some of them open up into these little pocket universes. So it's a scenario about waking up in this place, being trapped in it, and then trying to escape. And it's system agnostic, systemless. So I've come up with some new mechanics to sort of help pace the scenario, because the idea is you're supposed to keep exploring the structure until it makes sense to you. Then you can figure out a way to escape. And there's multiple paths to escape, and some tables for encounters. But it's a framework to run architectural horror in your game. And it's about, again, this uncanny place. And the horror is that you realize it was designed with a reason, but you don't know what that is, or maybe the reason is very sinister. You don't want to understand it. And if you understand it too much, you're not going to leave.
Head swap.